Hello and welcome to the couch. This is season 2, episode 1. We are excited for football season to start. My name is Julian Sheldon. I'm the host. Look, if you're a new listener tuning in, we talk about football. I'm going to talk a little bit more about different sports this year too. I want to include NBA, MLB. Probably not as much. I like the Phillies, but I don't watch every game. I really don't watch anything outside of the Phillies or the Cubs. But we will be talking more NBA and definitely NFL this year, and that's what we're going to focus on today is NFL. Football starts tomorrow, and I'm excited, especially because the Eagles are getting their banner up, and they're going to demolish the Cowboys. And speaking of the Cowboys, I feel like it's a crime if I don't start this episode talking about the Micah Parsons trade. Look, insane. I think easily the most insane trade I've ever been alive for. And not even because it was like, oh, wow, they got such a haul for him, but like the mind-blowing idea that the Cowboys would take their best player and trade him to the team that has whooped their butts in the playoffs recently. Like, easily they're outside of the division rival, I would say. Just for 2 first-round picks in Kenny Clark. And while I think Kenny Clark is fine, he had a down year last year. Why are you trading for a good player on a down year and giving up 2 first-round picks not giving up 2 first-round picks, but giving up your best player for him? No sense. No sense. But I do think that this was the last effort and probably the best price the Cowboys could get from Micah Parsons. And I say this because he didn't want to play there anymore. I've never seen a player go out on Instagram and say, hey, I don't want to play anymore. I really don't care about the money. They treat me terrible. They keep me from my agent, blah, blah, blah. I've never seen a player do that. And so I really, really think that he just didn't want to play there. And teams knew that and said, hey, look, we got to give him a contract. We know he wants to get out of there. It's not like we're ripping him away from Dallas. We don't have to give as much. The Cowboys are in a bind here. And so I think that teams knew that and were kind of lowballing. And I don't blame them. I mean, you're going to have to fulfill a really heavy contract and give up some capital for it. And I think that for the Cowboys side, Jerry Jones had a point. He said, look, we have 4 first-round picks, and we could do something with them. And while I agree, I just don't think that you can at this point. Who are you going to trade for? Trey Hendrickson has a deal done. You can't. Myles Garrett has a deal done. These are players that earlier we were talking about, maybe could get traded. It's done. It's done. You run out of time, and now you make this decision. And I think that it's the best decision that they could have made now. And even though it's the best decision they could have made now, it is the worst one. It is the worst thing because you're getting rid of a generational player for the mystery box that is 2 more first-round picks. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I got to say thank you, Jerry. I'm an Eagles fan. We get Parsons out of the division. I'm happy, okay? I just got to be honest. But look, I'm done talking about it. I promise. That was only 3 minutes. But I do think that Parsons is going to have a huge impact for these Green Bay Packers. And I think that it kind of puts them into almost immediate contention to maybe not win the NFC North, but definitely come second or third. I had them at 4. I think they were probably the weakest all-around roster. They had a top 10 defense last year, but I didn't really see the number 1 guy on that line who was going to, consistently get sacks and make plays in the backfield. But now that's not true. They have probably, easily the best edge rusher in the NFC and probably a top 5 edge rusher in the league. So I think that this is an all-time mishandle by the Cowboys, and I think that they know it. It seemed like in that press conference, Jerry Jones seemed to be struggling to find the answers to questions. And obviously, what answers do you have when you make a terrible decision? But, yeah. So, but today I do want to get into my QB rankings, my predictions for the year. I want to talk about Super Bowl predictions, number 1 overall pick predictions, what team is going to get the number 1 overall pick, and my power rankings, and a hot take. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and talk about a hot take because before we get into the power rankings. And my hot take is that the Bengals will make the playoffs. This might not be a super, super hot take. It might be simmering. It might be a simmering take. But it's definitely not ice cold. And I think that they are going to make the playoffs because while their defense was bad last year, and their defense is still not great, they have added Shamar Stewart, and I think that he's going to add some sort of value to that defense. And I think that if Burrow continues to play like he did last year, they were a slow start away from making the playoffs. And they have made an effort this year to get their starters going. A lot of their starters played in the preseason. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase played a decent amount in the preseason. They were trying to get them ready to go week 1. And I think that it's going to work. And I also think that their division is a lot less crowded than it was last year. Steelers obviously were better last year, made the playoffs. And I think that this year they're not as good. I think that they're an injury at QB away from, being one of the worst teams in the league. This is Dr. Pepper, by the way. Don't want any controversy. Don't want any speculation. But yeah, I got a nice Canes, little koozie. Shout out Canes. Bojangles is better though. Anywho, but yeah, my hot take is that the Bengals will make the playoffs this year, and I think that Trey Hendrickson is going to keep being Trey Hendrickson. I think he's going to keep getting a lot of sacks. He's obviously one of the best edge rushers in the league, and I'm really excited to watch this Bengals offense too. I think that you can't stop Jamar and T. Higgins, and also you got to think T. Higgins was out for a while last year, and maybe that has to do with something with the slow start. So if they're able to win a few of these first few games and get on a roll, I think that they're going to make the playoffs, and they could make a little push to maybe the second round. But let's go ahead and get into the power rankings. I just talked about the Bengals, and I know that they're 18 on here. But this was before the Trey Hendrickson signed his deal, and honestly, giving it a little more thought, I would probably move them up and move the Cowboys down. Obviously, the Cowboys was before the Parsons trade. And honestly, I'd move the Packers up maybe 1 or 2 spots. But to me, I just want to go through some of these teams and kind of give my thoughts on them. Eagles, obviously, number 1. I think that they have one of the best rosters in football, hands down. I think the coaches are pretty underrated. I think that Vic Fangio is one of the best DCs, and he's going to continue to have success. And I think really the only hole on the team is the cornerback 2 or 3, if you want to count DeJean in that contest. But I think that's the only hole in the roster, for real. And I think that it's going to be hard to beat this team with how successful they were last year. I mean, Philly for a while now has been a dominant rushing attack. And I think that that's not going to change. But I think they're going to give Jalen Hurts a little more liberty. And he is going to see a probably statistically better year this year. And I'm very, very excited to see this Eagles team. Also think that they have 2 teams in this division who are going to be terrible, and another team who's going to be good but has a pretty mediocre defense, and I think that they will be able to feast on all those wins. And even though they have a hard schedule, they will be able to at least siphon wins from the division to supplement that. But let's go down a few. The Commanders. I know a lot of people think Jayden Daniels is going to have a sophomore slump. I really don't think so. I think that C.J. Stroud had a slump last year, and it's kind of a stereotype that, the sophomore slump kind of plan or kind of idea. And I just don't see it with Jayden Daniels. I think he's, otherworldly, amazing arm, great legs. He's just the complete player. He's always prepared. I think that he makes great decisions. They improve the wide receiver room. I like Debo. I like Jalen Lane. They got Tunsil. I think that's great. They improved the line a little bit. And I still think that they see a lot of success this year. The Chargers, they also lost Slater. And that would probably move them down for me. I think that's huge. I think that in a team that wants to run the football, problems on the line are going to be, bigger than some other teams, and honestly, losing Slater is huge. And I for honestly both sides, passing, uh, and running obviously, but I think that they want to run the football, and their offensive line to me isn't the greatest. I know that they're pretty good, but I think that losing Slater is going to be huge, and it's going to hold this team back. Um, Chicago Bears. I'm really excited for this team. I think the defense is going to continue to be great. The one question on the defense is who's going to generate sacks? Sweat? Yeah, but he needs to do it at a higher rate than he did last year, and I want to see more from this team. And I think that the offense is the main focus, though. Is Caleb Williams going to take the jump? Is Ben Johnson going to deploy Swift in a better way? I think that while Swift probably isn't one of the top runners in the league, I think that he's still pretty good and that he can be serviceable. So I'm excited to see this Bears offense. I think they have a great wide receiver room, great tight ends, obviously. I'm very, very excited for this Bears team, and I think they're going to be pretty dang good. Packers, I'd move them up. I'd honestly swap the Cowboys and the Packers, and maybe I'd knock the Cowboys down a few more. But the Packers, I think, are going to be pretty dang good with Parsons now, too. They took their one need of not having anyone to rush the passer or to kind of be the guy that's going to consistently get sacks and be in the backfield, and they did it a week before the season. And so I'm very excited to see how this Packers defense is going to change. Now they lost Jair, so I think there's some problems in the secondary, but McKinney is really solid. Obviously being the safety, I think that if they're able to generate more pressure, that'll kind of patch up some of the holes that they have in the secondary. And I think that they could make a push for, like I said earlier, second or third in the NFC North. And then another team I'm high on, the Cardinals. I really think they improved their defense a lot. Kyler Murray has to play like Kyler Murray, and I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. could, take another step, hopefully, and obviously Trey McBride is going to continue being great. I think that there's a lot of untapped potential in this team, and I think that is mostly due to Shane Steichen being a defensive coach and not having a great defense, and now being able to unleash that. Obviously, drafting Will Johnson, getting Josh Sweat, I think was huge. I'm very excited for them as well. And then, obviously, if we're looking at this, you'll see one team that is kind of out of the ordinary in this bottom 12. And that they're sitting at 20 is the Houston Texans. I'm really not high on this team, guys. And I am really worried about this offensive line. Really worried. You trade away Tunsil, and now you have the starters from last year. And I know they got a new offensive line coach, but guys, this is going to be bad. This is going to be Caleb Williams' offensive line from last year bad, if not worse. I don't think there's any way they get a run game going because Mixon's going to be out for 4 weeks at least. And, man, I am very worried about this Texans team. The defense is great, and that's why I have them at 20. But while I really like Stroud and Nico Collins, the wide receiver room got worse. The line got worse. I don't see a way that they can make the playoffs. Maybe in such a struggling division they could, but even the Jaguars have upside to overtake them. The Colts have upside to overtake them if, Daniel Jones somehow returns to average, or if AR comes in and actually takes that leap. I think they both have better upside than this Texans team. And then the team right behind them, the Seattle Seahawks. Again, the line is so bad. Their line is so bad that last year their center retired midseason. And I think that trading Geno and getting Darnold is not an upgrade. And then trading DK and then you lose Lockett. It seems like all these pieces that were good last year that were winning you games are now swapped out for, the Walmart version, the Kirkland brand. And while I love, the Kirkland hot dogs or the Kirkland brand, it tastes good. I don't know how well it will go up against NFL football teams. And I'm not excited for the Seahawks team. I think Kenneth Walker's going to struggle because this line is going to be so bad. And then, obviously, you see that the Browns aren't in the bottom three, and there's a surprising team there, and that's the Steelers. I know Mike Tomlin is the king of 500 record, but I think that this is the year that it really goes downhill. Defense, great. I really love the secondary, honestly, but they're a few injuries away from. Just this whole team is a few injuries away from being a game I would turn off, like legitimately. Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, or doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers should. This offense is dead in the water. And Slay is older. I think he was struggling with some injuries last year. I think he's great, but what if he loses a step? What if Jalen Ramsey continues to be injury prone? All the best receiver you have is DK, who I think is good, but I think it's a little upgrade from Pickens, but I would have honestly liked to see both of them there. I would think that would have been for it. At least you're just throwing deep balls the whole game. And I think that the offensive line is really not good either. And so while the defense is mostly good, I think they're just a few injuries away from being the worst team in the league, and that is why they are. My number one overall pick prediction is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I feel like that is a scorching hot take, especially because Mike Tomlin has this record of being always going over 500, or at least being 500. And I know that they made the playoffs last year, but they didn't get better. Normally in the offseason, every team gets better. And the teams that don't are drastically worse because they may have been like this last season, or they may have been tied, but if you don't get better, you're getting worse. You're going down. You're getting worse. And so I'm really not excited for the Steelers team. I don't think that they're going to be very good. And they are also in a pretty tough division. I think that you go against the high-powered offense of Cincinnati. You go against great defense in Cleveland. And then you go against an all-around Super Bowl contender in the Ravens. How are you going to win those games? I think they'll sneak a few because they always do. But it's going to be really, really hard. But that's my power rankings for this upcoming season. And obviously, this doesn't include the strength of schedule. Obviously, the Eagles have one of the hardest strengths of schedules, so it wouldn't surprise me if they don't have the best record. But I think they are the best team at the moment. But yeah, I think that we just talked about. I just mentioned the Ravens, and now I just mentioned the Eagles. Let's go ahead and get into my Super Bowl prediction, and that is the Bird Bowl, Eagles versus the Ravens. I do think that this is the year that either Allen or Jackson get past Mahomes. I think that they do it in the playoffs, and I think that it's wonderful, and everyone rejoices because they don't have to see Kansas City in the Super Bowl for a fourth time in a row. And I am very, very excited. And I honestly think that this Ravens team is going to be very, very good. I think Jair, if he stays healthy, is going to really improve that defense, and I think that it's hard to stop King Henry. This is a very, very scary team, and I think Lamar actually gets it done because he was, a play away from seeing the Chiefs last year, and I think that they would have been able to beat the Chiefs last year. Because if you look at the Chiefs' game plan against the Eagles in the Super Bowl, it was, let's make Jalen Hurts throw the ball. If you're going to make Lamar throw the ball, you're in much more trouble than if you make Jalen Hurts throw the football. Because Lamar is better. And they're going to take more advantage of that than the Eagles could. And so I have the Ravens making the Super Bowl, and then obviously the Philadelphia Eagles. I can't say another team. With how good they are, I can't say another team for the NFC. I think that they continue to go back, and I do think they win. Because I honestly think that this Eagles defense is better than the Ravens, and I think that this offense is just as good, if not better. Honestly, you know what? I'm not going to hold back. This Eagles offense is better. Better wide receivers. I think the same caliber running back. I think you could give the edge to Saquon. Ravens have a better quarterback, but the offensive line is easily the Eagles. And I think that on defense, it kind of matches up everywhere, and I think that the Eagles almost win every single position except maybe safety. Obviously, we haven't seen Andrew Mukuba yet. We don't even know if he's going to start or if Sidney Brown's going to start. And Reed Blankenship, I think, is pretty underrated, but not better than the Ravens safeties. And so, but I think that this Eagles team wins back-to-back. I can only hope, right? So that's why I'm excited for this season. And let me know who you're thinking is the Super Bowl, and let me know who you're gonna have as the number one overall pick. Um, but yeah, and before we get into anything else, I do want to talk about my QB rankings. But honestly, before that, I want to talk about this Colts starting Daniel Jones because this is something that, again, blows my mind. But before we get into that, I want to say a huge thank you to Student Media for getting this room set up, allowing us to do this. We appreciate it, and definitely go check out everything else on the website, the UE Student Media website. I believe it's fireside.evansville.edu. They have a radio station, tons of other podcasts to listen to. So if you're listening to this one and you're saying, hey, maybe I'm not, hey, I'm not a sports guy, or that guy looks dumb, and you want to listen to somebody else, go do it. But let's go ahead and get into this. I want to talk about the Colts starting Daniel Jones. I think that this is a terrible decision from a PR standpoint, and that's where I want to go first. Because let's say, hey, you got Daniel Jones in the offseason to bring in competition for Anthony Richardson. And I think that starting Jones first is something that you're kind of playing your hand, They don't know what Jones looks like. They don't know how Jones is fitting in your system. So you kind of have you have the card in your hand. And I think that they should have played Richardson first and let him get experience. And if it's really not working out, you pull him and put in Daniel Jones. If he gets hurt, then you put in Daniel Jones. But I don't think that for Anthony Richardson confidence or the plan is to put Daniel Jones in. How did we see that last year when Joe Flacco got in and then Anthony Richardson came back and then it just wasn't good? It didn't work. It didn't help. And so I think that they just need to get past and let Anthony Richardson play games. He just doesn't play games because you keep benching him. It makes no sense. And so they need to let Anthony Richardson know that he is their guy and that they trust him to actually be their franchise quarterback. And so that's why I think they should have started Richardson week 1. But you know what's funny is that, honestly, I think that they probably could win some games with Daniel Jones at the beginning of the season. And I'm totally fine. And honestly, I would have been fine if they started Daniel Jones for a little bit and then switched it over to Richardson. That makes sense. Right? But no. Shane Steichen came out and said, look, I don't want to have a short leash on this. He's going to be the starter for the season. So the only hope for Colts fans is that Daniel Jones sneezes too hard and, is out for the year and they get to see Richardson play. But I thought this was funny. I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, if you were the Colts, head coach, what would you do? Who would you start? And they gave me their coach's plan. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Start Daniel Jones weeks 1 through 4 to study the offense and evaluate performance. Okay, fine. Give Richardson 5 to 10 plays a game and specialty packages to keep him engaged and get live reps. That's a pretty good idea. I didn't think about that. Maybe in the middle of the game provide some juice. You could kind of run the system. You're not necessarily a team that's going to make a Super Bowl run. And I think that that's a good idea. Hey, give him a few reps a game. Let him get in there. Let him make some plays and get comfortable. And then it says reevaluate by week 5 or post-bye. If Richardson's growth and practice performance justify it, he gets the keys. I think that's great. Why is that not the plan going in? Shane Steichen should have a short leash on this because he should want his first-round pick to come in and play games to win. And I think that when you saw just a few years ago when Richardson got hurt and Minshew was in and they almost made the playoffs, you saw that a system guy could go in there and be somewhat successful in the offense. And I think that that's what they want. I don't think that they understood that, hey, Richardson is this guy that's going to, he's going to create. He's going to go out of structure. And I think that they just want their quarterback in structure. I think that's honestly why they're starting Daniel Jones, and I really don't agree with it. I think that you should not have players fit into your offensive mold. You should build your mold around the players. It's like they're taking the square block and shoving it in the triangle hole. It just doesn't make any sense. But if we want to go ahead and get into the QB rankings, coming off that big talk of the quarterbacks, let's get into it. I'm going to go ahead and throw it up on the screen. And look, I know what you're thinking already. Burrow at 6? Look, I know. Misclick. I use the Bladen.com QB rankings. It's a great system. I really like it. You should go check it out. I think I just misclicked a few times and it gave me that. And so, sorry. He's at 4. My top 8 would go in the order of Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, and then Matthew Stafford. And that's my top 8. I don't think that the top 5 really have to be talked about except for Hurts. I think that Hurts, while very successful, and I love Jalen Hurts. He's very successful. I want to see the reins kind of unleashed. His whole thing is that he wins. He works in the system. He's going to win. And I want to see him out of the system. I want to see what it's like when he's not, when he's doing what he thinks he should do, not what he's being told. And honestly, no disrespect at putting him at 5. That's literally no disrespect. I think he's great. And I think that if they did that, he would have a statistically super high year. But I don't think that I can move him any higher than 5 because he has a statistically, I wouldn't say unimpressive, but he has some lower stats than a lot of these other guys. And then Jaden Daniels, I think the performance last year, I know it's only 1 year, but that was a all-time rookie performance. I mean, going to the NFC Championship game. And really, he didn't lose that game. It was a lot of the turnovers caused by the defense that lost that game. So I am very high on Jaden Daniels. I think he would be my 6. And then going down, I think to 11 is the next big surprise, Geno Smith. I think he's great. I think it was more the Seahawks struggles than his struggles last year. And I think that the Raiders trading for him is going to be a very, very good idea. And I think that now they have a real signal caller back there. He's really going to be able to spread the ball. You saw in that preseason game, he was taking shots at Brock Bowers immediately. So I think that he's going to provide a lot of juice for this offense and really, really ignite the Las Vegas team. And then Bo Nix is another guy I want to talk about. Playoff team last year. The only thing I want to see it repeated. I want to see more deep shots. I want to see more success against playoff teams. I want to see him beat good teams. Just haven't really seen it. And and that's why I have him at 22. Honestly, the only reason I have Drake May, Bryce Young, Trevor Lawrence above them is because I think Drake May was a better prospect, and I think that he was just as good last season. Bryce Young, I think, and Trevor Lawrence are poised for breakout years this year, and I think that, with the weapons around them, they could actually show what they have. And you saw Bryce Young, how good he can be the end of last season. And so I'm really excited for that. And then, I think the rookies at the bottom, I'm counting J.J. McCarthy as a rookie. I haven't seen him play besides that preseason. The only reason I'm giving him over Tyler Show is just because I think he's a better prospect once again. But that is that's pretty much all I have for today. I wanted to do just a short little episode before week 1 to talk about everything, get everything set up, celebrate week 1 of football. And you and my co-host couldn't be here today, scheduling issues, all that. But he'll be on the next episode. We'll definitely have more guests. Is there anything else I want to talk about? I just want to double check. Actually, let's talk about Cowboys-Eagles. Before I go, I have to talk about it. I'm so excited. I think we're 24 hours away at the time of recording this or so. And probably a little bit over, but give me 24 hours. Give me that number. I'd rather look forward to that. But I'm very excited for this Cowboys-Eagles game, and I think that the Eagles are going to easily win this week 1 matchup. The defense is not going to be there, especially the run defense. It's supposed to be rainy, so I think that Saquon's going to have a big day. And I also think that Kevin Petula's offense is going to be a little more pass-heavy than last year, so expect to see a lot more from Jalen Hurts. But for now, this is The Couch. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for listening. Thank you to everybody out there. Thank you to Student Media, obviously. And I will see you guys next week. If you want to see all of my week 1 predictions, check out my social media, my TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Shorts. I'll post them on there, and I will see you next week. This podcast is produced by Student Media. Student Media is a student organization at the University of Evansville. Student Media produces the Crescent magazine published online and in print 3 times a semester. Student Media produces several podcasts and utilizes design, photography, video, and sound towards experimental and academic learning in journalistic endeavors and engaging storytelling. Student Media elevates the voice of the student body and connects the campus and community to important information and points of view.